What? After finishing work and coming home, I couldn't unlock the front door. It was as if the house itself was rejecting me. Is it broken? I headed to the back door. However, the back door key didn't work either. The whole house seemed to be locking me out. I rang the doorbell, but no one answered. Then my mother-in-law, who was supposed to be inside, called me.
You're nothing but a freeloading parasite. You don't work, just eat our food, and you're practically a thief. I've had all the locks changed, so you've got no home to come back to. And if you try to force your way in, the security cameras will activate.
Her words were like a cold blade piercing my heart. If it's come to this, I'm done helping them. I made up my mind never to return to this house again. I immediately froze the bank account where I'd been pooling funds for living expenses. Suffer on the financial lifeline. Thus began my counterattack. As I imagined their bewildered faces, I calmly planned my next move. My name is Helen, and I'm 50 years old. I've married my husband, Mike, an office worker, for 25 years, but we don't get along very well. Our house is a single-family home with a yard and driveway, and we have a 25-year-old daughter named Sarah. But our household doesn't end there. There's another troublesome resident. She is my husband's mother, Susan, commonly known as my mother-in-law. She constantly complains about me.
Your cooking just isn't to my taste. Look, you don't clean properly.
It's always such trivial nonsense. My husband has a natural laziness and can't hold a job for long. Changing jobs repeatedly made our financial situation tighter, and Susan's nagging increased. One day, after I got home from my part-time job, I found her waiting for me in front of the house.
Oh, the weeds in the yard are growing again. What have you been doing all this time?
I sighed inwardly and replied, "Got it, I'll take care of them right away." Day by day, these moments slowly eroded my spirit. However, I had a secret source of joy. Every night before bed, I'd check the stock market and plan my future investments. One night, I noticed signs that a particular stock was about to skyrocket. This is it, I thought instinctively, and poured all my money into that stock. It was a gamble. A few days later, as I had anticipated, the stock price soared, and I made a fortune overnight. Though my heart screamed with joy, I kept my expression neutral and didn't say a word to my family. Now I can live freely without worrying about anyone. I was confident I had just won at life. 4 years into our marriage, my mother-in-law and father-in-law suddenly divorced. It was what people call a gray divorce. The reasons were unclear, but the impact caused ripples throughout our family. One evening at dinner, my mother-in-law calmly announced,
"We've decided to get divorced."
The atmosphere instantly froze. At that moment, countless questions swirled in my mind. Why now? Why so suddenly? But I didn't have the courage to voice any of them and just sat there in silence. Mike, though clearly shaken, tried to stay composed, but his trembling hands betrayed him. Later, when it was just my mother-in-law and me, I mustered the courage to ask, "Why did you decide to get divorced?" She paused for a moment, her gaze distant, and began speaking quietly.
This might not concern you, but I've always had this lingering dissatisfaction, even after all these years together. I never truly understood him.
Her explanation was vague as ever. After their divorce, Susan moved in with us, marking the start of a new set of problems. Months into living together, she began to not only interfere, but also harass me. One day, I prepared a special dinner just for her. I worked hard to make her favorite dishes and set them on the table. After taking one bite, she grimaced and declared,
Ugh, I can't eat something that tastes like this.
Sighing inwardly once more, I smiled and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll do better next time." Sometimes she would intentionally scatter trash while I was cleaning. One day, I had just finished cleaning the living room when she suddenly dumped flour, sugar, and salt all over the carpet and said,
Look, this place is still dirty.
Stunned by what I just witnessed, I quietly started cleaning all over again. Her harassment only escalated from there. One day, I realized that she had thrown away my important stock investment documents without my permission. Trying to contain my anger, I confronted her. "Susan, these documents are extremely important. Why did you throw them away?" She smirked coldly and replied,
Oh, those were just brochures, right? What if they're part of some scam or crime?
"A scam. A crime." Her ridiculous excuses were another blatant act of harassment. The worst offense came when I discovered I wasn't included in a trip I had planned. When my daughter, Sarah, was in middle school, we decided as a family to go on a trip. Since we had already chosen the destination, I was in charge of making the reservations.
I have other plans that day, so the three of you should go without me.
I booked accommodations for 3 people at a hotel and even arranged optional tours at the destination. But on the day of the trip, she suddenly declared,
What? Did I ever say I had plans?
Since the reservation was for 3, I suggested that we adjust it so all 4 of us could go together.
You must be mistaken. Mike and Sarah said they never heard anything like that.
She insisted. Even worse, my husband, Mike, and daughter, Sarah, sided with her. In the end, I was blamed for making a mistake with the reservation, and the 3 of them, my husband, daughter, and mother-in-law, went on the trip without me. As I stayed home, Susan left me with instructions.
The weeds in the yard are growing again. Make sure you clean it up.
Despite having taken time off for the trip, my 3 days off were spent taking care of the yard and deep cleaning the house. The night before the trip, I went outside alone, gazing at the stars while tears streamed down my face. Why was I so lonely? Why couldn't my family understand me? I silently asked these questions, but no answers came. On the morning of the trip, after seeing my family off, I started working on the yard. As I pulled weeds, I questioned myself. Is this really my life? Just then, my neighbor, Kate, called out to me.
Are you okay? Is something wrong?
Holding back tears, I replied, I'm fine, just a little tired. That afternoon, I decided to go to a nearby cafe by myself. As I sipped my coffee, a travel brochure caught my eye. The brochure was filled with pictures of families enjoying themselves with bright smiles. I picked it up and thought to myself, will I ever have a day when I can smile like that? On my way home from the cafe, I met an elderly man at the park. He was sitting on a bench, quietly reading a book. "What are you reading?" I asked him. The man smiled and said,
"This is the story of my life. I wrote it when I was younger, but I still like to read it every now and then."
Inspired by his words, I decided to write my own life story. When I got home, I pulled out a notebook and began writing about everything that had happened so far. I wrote about my mother-in-law's harassment, my family's cold attitude, and my own feelings of loneliness. Putting it all into words gradually lightened my heart, and I started to feel more optimistic. I made up my mind to cherish myself more and take back control of my life. While I endured my mother-in-law's harassment daily, there was one thing I simply couldn't tolerate. It was about my daughter, Sarah. Since she was little, she had always sided with Susan rather than me. At first I wondered, why is that? But I finally figured out the reason. Susan had been secretly giving Sarah money behind my back. Sarah was in 7th grade at the time and got about $20 a month as an allowance. I also gave her money for holidays and birthdays, which I thought was plenty for a middle schooler. But as a young girl, she probably wanted to go places and buy makeup. It seemed she had been asking Susan for extra money. Since Susan doted on her, she gave Sarah whatever she asked for.
"Grandma, I'm out of money again this month. Mom will get mad if I ask her. Can you help me out?"
Oh dear. Well, you're a young girl. There are lots of things you want to buy, right? How about $50? Will that be enough?
"Yeah, with that, I can go out with my friends. Thanks so much."
I overheard this conversation one day. What's more, the amount of money she gave had increased over the years. By the time Sarah was in high school, she was receiving $100 a month. Even though Sarah was old enough to work part-time, she didn't bother, knowing her grandmother would keep giving her money. And as time went on, Sarah's attitude toward me grew colder. One day, I saw Sarah and Susan chatting happily in the living room. Sarah was showing off a new outfit and said,
"Grandma, isn't this frilly outfit super cute? Mom doesn't know about it, but thanks so much."
Seeing this scene, I felt anger welling up inside me. That night, I decided to have a serious talk with Sarah. "Why are you taking money from Grandma?" She looked surprised and said,
"Well, you don't give me much allowance, and Grandma is nice to me."
I sighed deeply and tried to explain, but I couldn't get through to her. "That's not true. Grandma is only nice to you to get me in trouble."
You don't care about me at all.
Those words pierced my heart, but I calmly responded, "That's because I'm working hard to support our family." Then I confronted my mother-in-law. "Why are you giving money to Sarah?" She smirked coldly and said,
Oh, that's because you're stingy. I just want to give my granddaughter everything she wants.
I couldn't say anything at that moment, but inside, my anger was burning. One day, when I came home early from work, I found my daughter, Sarah, at home during her summer break. She was having a conversation with Susan that went like this.
How's your mom doing lately? Is she acting like a proper mother?
Not really. She doesn't take me anywhere and is always working.
What? It's just a part-time job. Why does she have to work so much?
I've told her to quit her job and just do housework, but she doesn't listen.
You're such a good kid, but with a mom like that, it's a shame.
I was speechless. I never imagined my daughter thought of me that way. Sarah had spent a lot of time with her grandmother since she was little. Over the years, she must have been conditioned to believe that the bad guy is Mom. Though I had endured my mother-in-law's harassment, learning that my daughter had completely taken her side broke my spirit. From that point on, I stopped following my mother-in-law's instructions. I refused her sudden requests for shopping or rides and stopped doing household chores on her schedule. In response, Susan began ignoring me completely. She wouldn't respond when I spoke to her, yet she talked normally with my husband and daughter. Seeing this, Sarah started treating me the same way, and even my husband, Mike, seemed distant. One evening, I sat alone in the living room and opened a photo album. Looking at pictures of Sarah as a child, tears welled up in my eyes. The smiles from those days were nowhere to be found now. I kept asking myself why I was so lonely and why my family didn't understand me. I decided it was time to express my true feelings to my family. At dinner, I gathered my courage and began to speak. I have something I want to talk about. I'd like to know how you all honestly feel about me lately. What I got in return was cold stares and a heavy silence. Susan frowned and sighed.
There you go again with this nonsense.
Sarah, still glued to her phone, said,
Mom, you're so annoying.
Mike didn't even look up from the TV. At that moment, I truly felt like I was a worthless presence in my family. Holding back tears, I quietly got up from my seat and shut myself in my room. The next day, I decided to talk to a coworker about my situation. She listened intently and said,
That sounds so tough, but you're not alone. I'm always here to listen.
Her words felt like a lifeline to me. Life went on like this for a while, and before I realized it, nearly 5 years had passed. Looking at it objectively, it wouldn't have been surprising if I had filed for divorce. My daughter ignored me, and my husband barely spoke to me. Just as I was thinking about how to change this situation, something unbelievable happened. One day, after returning home from work, I tried to unlock the front door as usual. What? For some reason, the key wouldn't go all the way in. Feeling uneasy, I tried entering through the back door. But that key didn't work either. I rang the doorbell, but no one answered. Even though Susan was supposed to be home, after a while, I got a call from her on my cell phone.
Stop ringing the doorbell.
When I asked her to unlock the door, she told me she had replaced all the locks. Why would you do that? Please let me in.
No, this isn't your home anymore. You've quit your job. Don't talk to anyone. And you're just a freeloading parasite. Disappear somewhere before Mike and Sarah get back. You're an eyesore.
She hung up before I could even respond. At that moment, I felt something inside me snap. All the suffering and humiliation I had endured flooded over me at once. Fighting back tears, I sat on a park bench nearby, staring blankly into space. The elderly man I had once met, reading his life story, approached me and asked,
Are you okay?
I let out some of the feelings I had bottled up inside and replied, I've been locked out of my own house. He listened to my story carefully and said,
When you're struggling, it's important to talk to someone.
His words made me feel just a little lighter. With no other options, I decided to go back to my parents' house for the time being. Thankfully, I had my work essentials and valuables with me. Most of what I'd left behind at home were clothes and accessories, so it wasn't a big deal. What I needed most was a place to stay for the night. Though I considered a hotel, I decided to head to my parents' house instead. It was about a 30-minute drive from my home. When I arrived, my parents were surprised to see me, but seemed genuinely happy.
Welcome back. How have you been? It's so good to see you.
Despite my sudden visit, they were kind and accommodating. My mom cooked my favorite dish, Hamburg steak, and my dad bought a bottle of red wine for me. Touched by my family's kindness and a little tipsy from the wine, I couldn't hold back my tears during dinner.
What's wrong? Don't cry. I can tell something's bothering you, but if it's hard to talk about, you don't have to.
You tend to take on too much. Don't try to carry everything by yourself. Sometimes letting it out makes things easier.
Their kind words gave me the courage to share everything I had been through and to ask for advice on what to do next. My parents listened to me quietly until the end, but their expressions grew darker, and my dad clenched his fists so tightly they turned red with anger.
This is ridiculous. Treating our daughter like that. And Mike, not doing anything while you suffer. What a heartless man.
You've been holding it all in, haven't you? It must have been so hard. You don't have to endure it any longer. Bottling it up will only break you in the end.
If it's too much, come back home. You can grab your things later. For now, just stay here.
After the conversation, they insisted I stay with them for a while, and I agreed. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in a long while. The warmth of my parents' home brought peace to my heart. The next morning, I woke to find my mom preparing breakfast.
Good morning. Did you sleep well?
I smiled and replied, "Yeah, thanks to you." As I ate breakfast, I thought about my next steps. To overcome the pain I'd endured, I decided to focus on taking care of myself first. A few days later, I mustered the courage to call Mike. "I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" He sounded a bit surprised but agreed. We met at a restaurant that held special memories for us from when we were dating. There, I poured out everything I had been holding in. "It's been so painful that you've never understood how I feel, and enduring your mom's harassment, only to be ignored by Sarah, has pushed me to my limit." Mike listened in silence, then spoke quietly after a moment.
"I'm so sorry. I regret not noticing how you felt. Let's sit down with my mom and Sarah and have an honest discussion. Please come back home."
But I had no intention of returning. A few days later, my parents' house phone rang. The caller ID showed my home number, so I answered, and it was Susan.
Oh, I'm sorry about the other day. You know, there've been a lot of burglaries lately. And well, I lost my keys. I got scared that someone might find them and break in, so I had all the locks changed right away. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Please, come back home soon.
She rattled off excuses as soon as I answered. But I knew exactly what her true intentions were. She wasn't truly sorry because she just wanted her financial lifeline, me, to return. She must have found out that I earned more than her son. Otherwise, she wouldn't have bothered to call. Just as I had told Mike, I had no plans to go back to that house. I told her as much.
You're an adult. Just let it go. Don't act all high and mighty just because you make a little money. My son works so much harder than you ever could and will earn far more than you someday.
Her words were steeped in envy, driven by the fact that I had been supporting most of the household finances. Mike changed jobs of his own accord, but the new company was struggling financially. There were no bonuses, and his base salary was low. He seemed drawn to the idea of commission-based pay, but it hadn't worked out for years. He once said to me,
"It's going to work out for sure. So please support me until then."
This happened a few years after we both started working. Fortunately, I had enough income from stock dividends to support the family. As he asked, I had been supporting our family all this time. I endured Susan's snide remarks and Sarah's cold shoulder. Even though Susan was aware of the situation, she couldn't bring herself to admit it. Instead of apologizing, she insisted that the family would be fine even without me. I had reached my breaking point. I decided to take a firm stance with her and said, "I'm not coming back home anymore. I won't continue supporting the household finances. From now on, you'll have to manage on your own." She hung up in disbelief, but at that moment, I felt a sense of liberation. I told myself this was the right thing to do. Afterward, I threw myself into work while also prioritizing my personal time. I started new hobbies like yoga and painting, focusing on refreshing my mind and body. I also enjoyed spending time with new friends I had made. About a month after I left the house, I received a phone call at my parents' home. It wasn't from my husband or mother-in-law. It was my daughter, Sarah.
Mom, where are you? Please come home soon. Things are a mess here. We need you.
What was going on? After treating me so poorly, why was she asking me to come back now? But it didn't seem like she missed me. As I listened, it became clear that they were struggling financially. At this point, though, I had no intention of helping. Sarah was 25 years old. She should know the difference between right and wrong by now. Yet she had ignored me all this time. She hadn't studied seriously, so she couldn't secure a proper job. When she finally decided to work, she settled for part-time jobs instead of aiming for a full-time position. She probably thought part-time work was fine since she'd always lived comfortably. But now that I was gone, Mike's income alone couldn't sustain their previous lifestyle. Unbeknownst to them, my income was close to $1 million. I had built up my wealth steadily through stock investments, eventually acquiring a small company and becoming its CEO. I was grateful that Mike hadn't opposed my decision to start investing. However, I kept my success a secret, knowing Susan would ridicule me, and Sarah would side with her. Mike's base salary was almost equivalent to that of a new hire. While his job had a commission-based structure, he struggled in sales and rarely earned beyond his base salary. As much as I felt sorry for Sarah, I froze the bank account where I had been pooling money for household expenses, effectively cutting off financial support. I decided to let my mother-in-law and the rest of them experience the consequences of their actions. However, I had no intention of letting my revenge end there. The house where my family had been living was built with my money. The mortgage was fully paid off, and I was free to sell it at any time. I had already begun the process of selling it, and a buyer was about to close the deal. I thought it would be too harsh to suddenly say, "Get out," so I called Sarah to inform her. I'm planning to sell the house, so you need to move out soon. I won't provide any financial support, and I'm filing for divorce from your dad. I've sent the divorce papers, so tell him to sign them quickly."
Wait, we have to leave this house. Where am I supposed to live? We barely have money for food as it is.
"That's not my problem. You're an adult now. Figure it out yourself." Sarah seemed like she wanted to say more, but I didn't want to continue the conversation, so I hung up. I didn't intend to completely abandon my responsibility as her mother, but after everything she had put me through, I felt no emotion at all. To clear my mind, I went to a nearby park alone. Sitting on a bench and listening to the rustling of the trees, I carefully considered my next steps. At that moment, an old friend happened to visit the park and spotted me.
Fancy running into you here. What's going on? You look a little down.
I explained my current situation and shared my worries. She was shocked but listened sympathetically.
That's really tough. But you're a strong person, and I know you'll get through this. If you ever need help, don't hesitate to ask.
Her words felt like a lifeline, and I resolved to keep moving forward. Afterward, I reevaluated my life and set new goals. Starting small, I joined local volunteer activities. Through interacting with the community, I began to rediscover myself. I had notified Mike and the others about moving out, but I was concerned they might refuse to leave. However, likely out of concern for appearances, they moved out before the house was sold. Mike signed and returned the divorce papers without much resistance, probably because Susan pressured him to do so. I never understood why Susan disliked me so much, but she constantly spoke ill of me to Mike.
Having her in the house ruins the atmosphere. Even Sarah doesn't think of her as a mother, and there's no point in staying with her. You'd advance further in your career without her.
Mike knew I was the one supporting the household financially, so he managed to deflect her comments at the time. However, Susan, unaware of this, likely found me intolerable. Mike wasn't the type to stand up for himself. Whenever Susan said something, he obeyed without question. He probably signed the divorce papers reluctantly after Susan insisted. For me, his cooperation was a relief. If he had refused to sign, it could have led to a lengthy legal battle. To avoid any such complications, I sold the house and gave Mike half of the proceeds. However, I warned him not to let Susan or Sarah spend it frivolously. The three of them moved to Susan's childhood home. Her childhood home was far away and is currently occupied by other relatives. Those relatives held traditional values, believing that the head of the household is always right. Living as guests in such an environment, the three of them must be feeling quite out of place. I had met those relatives once at a funeral. Although they seemed unapproachable, they were fair people who strongly valued propriety and disapproved of any unethical behavior. Susan's mistreatment of me as a daughter-in-law spread throughout the family, and the family elder reportedly told her,
"Repaying someone who supported you financially with such unkindness is heartless. She likely wants nothing more to do with you, and I won't tell you to fix things, but at the very least, try to become a decent human being."
I wish it had come to that realization earlier, but knowing them, they wouldn't have listened to anything I said. For the record, it was me who reported the incident of the locks being changed to those relatives. Having exchanged contact information at a previous funeral, I sent them recordings of my conversations with Susan. Hearing the recordings enraged them, and they openly expressed their anger toward her.
I always thought she was selfish, but she must stop this mistreatment. And what about her son? How can he not defend his wife?
Messages like these flooded in. Those same relatives also kept me updated on what happened afterward. The three of them, Mike, Sarah, and Susan, were now staying at Susan's childhood home, where they were expected to help with the family business. That family runs a farm. Sarah spends her days helping out, while Susan, due to her age, doesn't work in the fields, but is responsible for cooking and cleaning. Mike found a new job at a nearby company and reportedly works late into the night. When he comes home, everyone else is already asleep, and if he makes any noise, he's scolded. He quietly eats his dinner under dim lighting and leaves for work earlier than anyone else in the house. All three of them seem completely worn out. As for me, I continued living with my parents as before. The only major change was that my investments had performed even better, and my dividend income was about to double. As a gesture of gratitude for letting me stay, I decided to build a new house for my parents. My parents said, "Things are fine as they are," but their weakened legs made certain aspects of the house inconvenient for them. I planned a fully accessible home for them. When I showed them materials from the home builder, they started to warm up to the idea.
This kitchen looks so practical. I can put the fridge here and the microwave over there.
Is it really okay to have a house this big? I even get my own study. It's so generous of you.
Of course. I'm grateful to have been born into this family. I haven't done enough for you as a daughter, so please let me do this. Hearing that, my parents teared up. And so, my new chapter of life began. It felt like the calm after a storm, a serene sea after turbulent days. I took a deep breath and began envisioning my future. To heal my heart, I planned a solo trip. The destination? Catskill Mountains, a place I had always dreamed of visiting. It was the season for stunning autumn leaves, and the scenery was truly soul-cleansing. During my stay, I chose to stay at an old inn. The innkeeper treated me with such kindness, as if she could see right into my heart. Through our conversations, I learned that she had gone through a similar experience. She began to speak softly.
I was in a similar situation once. After divorcing my husband, I started a new life. What I learned is the importance of valuing yourself.
I nodded deeply at her words. Valuing myself became my new starting point. One day, I was invited to a barbecue with some people I had met at a neighborhood event. Everyone there welcomed me warmly. Among them was a woman who mentioned she volunteered at the local community center. She encouraged me to join the activities at the center. Through them, I was able to make many new friends. Playing with local children and keeping elderly people company filled my heart with a sense of fulfillment. It was a moment when all my past struggles felt worth it. In my new life, I began valuing my time and pursuing hobbies with passion. I started attending painting classes, where I found joy in creating artwork with my classmates. I also joined a book club at the local library, where immersing myself in literature brought me a sense of peace. During an event at the community center, I met a man named Kevin. He was also a volunteer dedicated to helping the community. We hit it off right away and spent hours talking. His kindness and enthusiasm deeply resonated with me. Kevin taught music to local children, and his stories of passion for his work captivated me.
Supporting children's dreams brings me the greatest joy.
He shared with me so. Those words warmed my heart. As I embraced my new life, I rediscovered myself. I realized that while life can be challenging, overcoming those challenges always leads to new opportunities. Alongside this rediscovery of myself, meeting a wonderful man like Kevin brought unexpected joy and made my heart flutter in a way it hadn't in years.